Welcome to the Reconnection Club podcast, the show that helps parents heal troubled relationships with their adult sons and daughters. I'm your host, psychotherapist Tina Gilbertson. Each week, I'll offer you compassion, clarity, and personal development tips designed to help you reconnect, not only with your child, but with yourself. Now let's get started. There's nothing normal about estrangement from family, but sometimes a normal phase of development can contribute to estrangement because the adult child is at a time in his life when he naturally needs some more space. And that need for space can happen even in families that were very close, right up until the estrangement began. Parents in close families like this are often shocked when their child pulls away. It seems totally out of character, and it creates what feels to the parents like an emergency situation. They feel like they've got to fix this immediately or their child will keep moving away from them forever. By the way, if any of your children appear to be acting out of character, be sure to listen to episode 14, where I talked about what might be going on there. And you can find that at reconnectionclub.com/14. Anyway, there are a couple of developmental processes that all of us are faced with in life that require us essentially to figure out who we are and how to best live as adult individuals. And the two processes I want to talk about today are individuation and differentiation. There's a lot to be said about these, but in a nutshell, individuation is kind of what it sounds like. It's the process of embracing our own unique identity. It's answering the question, who am I apart from being so-and-so's child, or apart from being a member of the such and such family? Who am I? And that can take some time to figure out. You and I, if we're growing as we should be, are still working on this question. Even today, we are refining the idea of who exactly we are. So that's individuation. Differentiation is, I think, an even harder task, and it's a little bit more subtle, a little bit more difficult to understand. It is the psychological and emotional maturing that allows us to be close to other people without feeling swallowed up by the relationship and without drowning in a confused tangle of feelings that belong to both ourselves and others. As adults, we need to be able to differentiate between thoughts and feelings, and also between our thoughts and feelings versus those belonging to other people. And in some families, family members find it hard to distinguish between their own feelings and those of other family members, and also between facts or thoughts about facts and emotions. For example, if I feel frustrated by something that you are doing, is it me or is it you? I mean, am I being unreasonable or are you being frustrating? In other words, are my feelings pointing to an external reality that says something about you, or is my reaction just an artifact of my own internal process? Well-differentiated people can experience frustration or other negative feelings and at the same time acknowledge the other person's goodness, the other person's good intentions. That's the difference between feelings and thoughts. I feel frustrated, but I know that you're a good person and you're actually trying to be helpful right now, or whatever it is that's going on. I can recognize it intellectually while still having my feelings. Being able to hold feelings separate from thoughts about facts is a big achievement, and one that most of us could use more practice with, no matter how old we are. So these two projects of individuation and differentiation are part of normal human development. They usually kick into high gear around the time a child contemplates leaving home, which could be 18 or 48. Everyone is different. So although late teens through mid-20s are a common time for this stage, it really can happen at any age. I heard from a mom whose child had always been close, and he moved out. I think he was in his 40s and was suddenly estranged. And this was devastating to her, as you can imagine. But in there somewhere, I could also imagine a developmental process that was kind of finally kicking in, even though it was somewhat late. So that illustrates that really this can happen at any time, but typically, let's say late teens through mid-20s or late 20s. As you might be able to imagine, this psychological and emotional development is pretty personal, and it might require some space and time away from what's familiar. Your child may have estranged himself not only from you, but from other family and even childhood friends. All of you maybe remind him of a younger self that he's trying to shed as he steps into the adult he's supposed to become. If you suspect that at least part of the reason for your child's distancing and estrangement behavior could be due to a phase of development, here are some things you can do. Number 1, redefine your child's behavior as needing room for growth rather than as rejection of you personally. I know you may feel hurt, abandoned, or even devalued by your child, but that is you reacting as a person. As a parent, your role is necessarily being somewhat downgraded as your child's independence comes to the fore. But it is that role and not necessarily the person behind it that is being declined by the child. So redefine that behavior as the child moving toward growth rather than specifically away from you. Number 2, give your child the space she's asking for. She has got this developmental work to do and probably a bunch of other tasks in her life now. And it's easier for her to do all of it if she's got the freedom to maybe experiment with being alone more or being with new people more often. She just needs to be free to explore different ways of being. Theoretically, she could certainly do this while staying in touch with you and answering your texts. But in practice, many of us need to create distance from family to really feel like we're spreading our wings. I know I moved thousands of miles away from home after I graduated from college. I lived at home with my parents throughout college, but as soon as I graduated, I was off. Now, I wasn't aware of needing distance from my family, but I do remember being eager to get out there and embrace the big wide world. What about you? What moves have you made in your life to try to make room for your own individuation and differentiation? Think about that while I move on to number 3. Train your focus on your own personal development while your child is out there exploring. This is exactly the right time to remember who you are besides being so-and-so's parent. You don't have to worry that your child will forget you. Did you forget your parents? It's pretty hard to do since most of us have just 2 people in the whole world we think of in those roles. Parents are special and important, no matter how long we live. Your unique relationship to your child as a parent will always remain intact, even if what it looks like has to change. A growing, thriving parent is a far more attractive person to the young adult than a worried, anxious, or insecure one. Be the parent your child spontaneously thinks about calling rather than dreads hearing from. The only way to be your best self is by attending to your continuing personal development. All of us, if we're doing things right, are still growing. So number 3 is remove your focus from your child and place it on yourself right now. Number 4, check your social support network. The sudden absence of a child can reveal holes in your network. These are holes that may have been filled by your child before, but now need to be filled by peers instead, or even your own parents. I'm not saying you can't expect to have any relationship with your child, but that your emotional needs should be met by people who are reliably there in your life right now. people who respond to you when you reach out to them, and who make you feel loved and appreciated. Number 5, recognize your fear of losing your child forever as just a fear, not a fact. That's an exercise in differentiation right there. Just because you feel fearful of losing your child forever doesn't mean that's likely to happen. Most estrangements are temporary, and that is certainly true of any distance that's motivated largely by these developmental processes I've been talking about. It's okay to feel that fear, but recognize it as a fear, not reality. And lastly, number 6, you might have some grieving to do, so let yourself grieve. Even on the other side of estrangement, your relationship with your adult child is never going to be the same as when your child was a little kid living under your roof. That particular time of your lives really is gone forever. You're going to have a different relationship with an adult version of your child who's different from the kid you remember. It's perfectly appropriate to grieve the loss of that special time in your lives when in many ways things were much simpler between you. So those are 6 practical ways to approach an estrangement that's motivated by your child's stage of development. Number 1 was redefine his behavior as stemming from developmental needs, not a rejection. 2, give your child the space she's asking for. Don't try to get her to stay in contact if she's pulling in the opposite direction. Number 3, focus on your own personal growth while your child is out there exploring the world. Number 4, assess your social network. You deserve companionship and caring. Where will that come from when your child isn't available? Number 5, don't give in to irrational fears that you're losing your child forever. Remember, most estrangements are temporary. And number 6, grieve what you have actually lost, which is the old ways of relating to your child as a child rather than an independent adult. For help with experiencing grief and other difficult feelings in a constructive way, you can see my book. It's called Constructive Wallowing: How to Beat Bad Feelings by Letting Yourself Have Them. I'll link to that book in the show notes, but you might be able to find or order it at your local library if you want to check it out before purchasing it. Again, the book is called Constructive Wallowing: How to Beat Bad Feelings by Letting Yourself Have Them. Until next time, remember that you are a loving, lovable, and still growing human being. So please take good care of yourself. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Reconnection Club podcast, I invite you to check out reconnectionclub.com. The Reconnection Club is for parents at any stage of estrangement from their adult, child, or children. So whether you've just realized there's trouble between you, you've been living with estrangement for years, or you're newly reconciled but still walking on eggshells, the Reconnection Club is your essential resource for information, support, and continued personal growth. With our courses and workshops, expert interviews, monthly Q&A calls, and a friendly, active community, the Reconnection Club is a wonderful place to be for anyone suffering the pain of estrangement from an adult, child, or children. So check it out at reconnectionclub.com.